Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bushels. Today's guests are Kent and Melissa Williams from Illinois, two farmers who built their operation from a few hundred acres into a thriving business through sheer grit, faith, and long hours. We talk about near misses, borrowed money, marriage through chaos, and how technology and labor are shaping the future of farming. Let's get into it. All right, we're back at it. We had some internet issues. We're going to give it another go. I guess what we'll do, since we're just going to throw out that first 30-second recording, we'll have you introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Melissa Williams. I'm originally from a really small town in southwestern Indiana. Did not grow up on a farm or really knew anyone that farmed. But as small as our town was, no one really farmed. It was more in the rest of the county than it was our little town.
I grew up on a small grain farm, and that was my primary interest growing up. And with the size of the farm, I came to realize that most likely was not going to provide a living for myself and my family. But we built on that and expanded into what it is today. I grew up in a little town of Wadesville, which was very small, very rural area. And we now reside in Illinois, about 15 miles from where we grew up, although it's geographically difficult to travel back and forth, even though it's not a great distance.
The terrain or no square miles where you're at?
The lack of roads, and the state line is a river.
Okay.
So you have to cross the bridge, and those are few and far between.
We grew up in the same county, but the farm that we bought ended up being on the Illinois side.
Okay, so Kent, you grew up on a farm, but that's not the farm you're at now? Is that what you're saying?
Mostly, yes. My dad was never a large grain farmer. And when he retired, he was in his late 60s, just farming a few hundred acres. So I took what I had and we built on it. And through some opportunity and a whole lot of luck, we have gotten to where we are today. It's not been the easiest road, but we're here. And we may go broke tomorrow, but if we made it this far, I think we might actually make it.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive to hear that, not knowing the whole story. It sounds like maybe you had a little bit, but going from just about nothing to a pretty sizable operation in one generation, pretty impressive.
I don't really believe in luck, but we've had a lot of luck along the way. A lot of people that believed in us enough to give us a chance.
So backing up a little bit on the personal level, how'd you guys meet? We don't have
Do
to
you
get
want to
into
explain? Do you want to
We don't-
explain that?
we don't have to get
I'll,
into
I'll explain it.
It sounds bad when you say that we met in a bar. I was going to college and bartending at night.
Was that your second or your third job?
I had a full-time job, went to college full-time, and that was my night job. I was working all the time. One night in October, it rained. He came in for a cheeseburger. The place was dead. It was just him, me, and the owner, and we sat around and talked, and 25 years later, the rest is history. I just hate saying we met in a bar. But we did kind of.
Lifestyle's different now. I'm 36, and that's where everybody hung out at, the small town bars where people went and shot pool and stuff like that. So I don't see any problem with that.
And that's the way, because we actually met in the town that he grew up in, where everybody hung out. And the same thing, there was 2 restaurants in town, and they were both in the bar. And of course, everybody played darts and pool, and that was the hangout spot.
It's just different now. People don't go to the bars to shoot pool or play darts anymore.
Even the bars we hung out at in Evansville, the biggest town close to us, most of them is closed. So I'm not even sure what younger people do anymore to
hang out on their phones at home.
I think so. That's pretty much all our kids do. They don't even know how to talk on a phone. They can only text or Snapchat or.
How far apart were you guys when you grew up?
Less than 10 miles.
You didn't know each other until
No.
I knew her grandfather and knew of her dad. Our paths didn't cross. There's 4.5 years difference. I was out of high school when she was entering. We went to different schools, but yet there was enough of an age gap between us that our paths just never crossed. We knew a lot of the same people.
My dad and grandpa had an industrial construction company. He knew grandpa and then knew of dad because they were in the construction world. He knew my uncle because he farmed. We knew a lot of the same people, but never crossed paths, mostly probably because he worked all the time.
I don't know if I sent you this episode, but another guy from Ohio I just interviewed last week, his wife grew up 10 minutes away from him, and he didn't meet her until a year or two after college.
It's about right. When I moved actually to his town is when we actually met. But no, we didn't grow up very far from each other. But like you said, especially when you're younger, 4 years or so, the difference in junior high and high school is a big difference.
One night can change the rest of your life then, huh?
In a good way sometimes.
Hopefully it's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of appears to be that way. I appreciate you sharing a little bit on the personal side of things, but going back to the farm, I'd like to go into a little more detail. You grew up on a small farm, Kent, then kind of transitioned to your own thing. Could you kind of go through that?
Prior to farming full time, I worked at a small, local, independently owned John Deere dealership, and I was a service tech, ran a service truck for about 10 years. And during that 10-year period, I got to know a fella that we kind of became friends, I guess you might say. And I did service work for him, and he expressed he was going to retire someday. A lot of older farmers say, I'm going to retire someday. And I guess that could be a misleading statement. I think everybody's going to retire someday, but nobody knows when. Whenever he did retire, we were able to start farming the majority of his rented acreage. In that situation, he had some assets that we purchased from him in that same time period. I don't really know how we did it. The 50-mile-an-hour windshield view of that situation looks really good and it looked really easy, and it wasn't. And there were a whole lot of trying times involved in that. I remember our first child was born. We'd been married about a year. He was a cranky baby, and the kids never did sleep with us, but she was exhausted, and we laid him down, and she was asleep. I couldn't sleep. I remember looking at him thinking, there's no way this is going to work out. It was not easy. Tremendous amounts of money, numbers I was terribly uncomfortable dealing with. Luckily, I had enough people on my side. I had some lenders that believed in me, had some landowners that very much believed in me, and here we are. I've had a few of those people, I don't want to say jealous people, but envious people that maybe thought that things were a lot easier for me than they probably end up being. And they kind of made light of the situation. And I said, well, if I had to do it over, I don't know if I'd do it again. I've told that to half a dozen people over the years, and they look at you like, that's insane you would say such a thing. I said, the fact of the matter is, I could never be lucky enough that it would work twice. We just got lucky that it worked. The current ag economy is not real good for production ag. It's tough. And I think most producers out there, if they're honest with themselves, they're losing money every day. We could go broke. I don't think we will. But if we made it this far, I think we can see our way through this.
Yeah, when people get jealous and talk smack, oh, you got it easy, they're just looking at what you have right now, not the previous 15 years.
We're very thankful for what we have, and we're very thankful that we've been able to do what we have. But there are a lot of stories in ag, and not just in ag, but in different business, where people been very fortunate of certain circumstances. And it's all about opportunity. It's what you make out of it. Some people will walk past an opportunity because they don't want to take the risk. Unless things are outright, I hate to use the word handed to or given to. If you have to take true risk to build a business, it takes intestinal fortitude that a lot of people don't have. I don't know that I necessarily had it. I was just in a position where I thought if I was ever going to be where I wanted to be, I was going to have to take those chances.
Once you get so deep, I imagine maybe you had to take out some loans to get started. What were your
Oh,
options?
I had to borrow money. I had to borrow money from anybody that would give me the time of day, and just hope and pray that I could pay it back.
What are your options at that point? Do you just quit and pay off it for 30 years or hope things turn around and pay it
That's
off
right.
sooner? Big picture, your best bet was probably just sticking with it and hoping things would turn around. If you would have quit, you'd probably still be paying off that debt. You talked about picking up rented acres. What'd you do for equipment?
We had to beg, borrow, and steal money from anybody to buy the equipment to farm the land. And some of that equipment came from the fellow that the rented land came from. We had to buy some outright on our own, but we did buy some machinery from him.
Melissa, from your perspective, what was it like on your side?
I had no idea. My dad and my grandpa both did industrial construction. So as far as like the equipment, the workload, the working all the time, but I was never in the business side of it. Growing up, I didn't know anybody that farmed and I really didn't know anything about it. And he has basically taught me the financial part of farming from the beginning.
Borrowing money to pay interest just absolutely
That blew my mind.
dumbfounded her. She just could not wrap her head around the thought that you're going to pay interest at a bank with borrowed money.
I'm like, that makes no sense. He's like, yeah, you do. We start talking about our operating line and how that works. I was working full time when we got married, so I didn't do a whole lot on the actual business end of it. I would run a piece of equipment or work ground, run the bulldozer, something like that. But that was just on occasion because I was working full time. And then once we had our oldest, I quit working at the hospital and came home to help out with the books a little bit and raise our son. And when I started a little bit of that, I was extremely overwhelmed with the size of the bills. And it was hard for me to wrap my head around. But of course, he explained it all to me, helped me through all of it. Of course, we weren't then anywhere where we are now, but I guess it's been almost 17 years I've been doing the books. Still don't always know what I'm doing, but it's getting better. Traction has helped a lot. I've used it for 2 years and it is more user friendly for someone like me that doesn't have a clue about accounting. I have a medical background, not a banking accounting background. It has helped me tremendously to make more sense of the numbers. With previous programs, I paid the bill and that was it. I didn't really know where it was going as far as ROI or anything like that. So I'm getting better. I don't want to say meticulous books because I'll never be there, but getting better about putting things where they belong to know our ROI and get a better sense of it.
There's a lot of numbers to keep track of.
Funny story, when I was working at the hospital and putting an office in the house, one of the sales reps, we were talking about it and he said, well, you need an office? I'm trying to start with the books and paperwork and all of that. And he said, don't you guys just farm? And that was kind of my first slap in the face about how the rest of the world is about farming. I was the same way. Windshield view, you hear about farmers or whatever, and they plant, and then they go to the lake for the summer, and then they harvest, and then they go to Florida for the winter. And that's all I knew about farmers. The perception is you plant and harvest, spend time in a tractor twice a year. What do you do the rest of the year? Vacation, get a boat. Then you get into it and you realize that's like a very small amount of what actually goes into farming. There's so much more to it than just putting the seed in the ground and taking the crop off the field.
You mean it's not just grunt work at the farm?
Right? Yeah. Anymore, there's so much technology into it, which is great. And it helps, again, with traction and him using climate and all that coming together. It helps so much to keep track of things logistically and as far as book work until something, goes down, internet goes down, like as in our case, a lot, or lose satellite signal or something. But between the iPads and equipment, it's fantastic, but it can also be a pain when he gets ready to go to the field to plant and the iPad needs to update. He's like, I want to go now. I need to go plant right now, but he can't until it updates and it can record what he's doing.
Technology has allowed improvements in agriculture. It's not just agriculture, but as a society. We cannot operate with technology, and that's really kind of a scary thing.
Without it.
We cannot operate without it.
Yeah, so you mentioned, I brought up the term dumb grunt work. I believe I can say it because I grew up on a farm. And there's definitely parts of farming that are just blue collar, stick your nose on the grindstone and work. But
Oh, yeah.
you have to know your technology, you have to know finances. I'd say the biggest part of farming success, especially row crop, is science. Chemicals are no different than pharmaceuticals. There's probably not as many of them, and you don't hear about them because they don't affect people's health, but your chemical mixes, your fertility, you have to know the science of your soil and the nutrients. Science is a big part of it. So farming covers so many different aspects that people just work a job and focus on that one aspect when farmers are doing 5 of those.
Yeah.
In farming, you have to know a little bit about a lot, but there's not enough time to know a lot about all of it. Hopefully, you know enough to where you can fill in the gap and connect the dots and get the job done at the end of the day. I realized in the service world, I wasn't as talented as customers thought, but I could connect the dots and make it all happen. And it's very similar to farms. Every day is a new day, and what I think we're going to do for the day or what I think I'm going to do for the day, if I were to take 30 seconds to write it down on a piece of paper, it would be 30 seconds completely wasted because usually by 8, 9 o'clock, my plans for the day are shot out the window and it's a new script. It's let's just go put out those fires and see how to get through this day without more collateral damage. We have center pivot irrigation, several center pivots, and that in itself sometimes that's a full-time job, or can be in the summertime, keeping that going and keeping employees all kind of headed in the right direction when things don't go as planned. A lot of it is grunt work, but a lot of it's not. And you have to be able to pull all those pieces together and make it happen sometimes.
There's a phrase that fits perfectly for farmers. So I have some friends that maybe grew up in town and they'll ask for my help on something like, just for example, building a fence. How'd you learn to do that? The perfect phrase for farmers is a jack of all trades, master of none. They might be master of some trades, but you have to know a little or more than a little bit at just about everything. Finances, trading, science, technology. When you have so much on your plate, it's hard to master any of them, but you just get so familiar with different aspects. I don't farm full time, but I grew up on a farm. I have a lot more capabilities of fixing an engine or building my own backyard fence. You just learn so much from being around a farm because you have to know so much. We talked about how you got started on the farm, and Melissa, you talked a little bit about what you were doing when you guys met. I want to go into a little more detail of those early years when Kent wasn't sure if he's going to be able to make it work. How are those conversations between you guys about, do we move forward? Do we make this work? Or was he sharing all that with you?
It wasn't all roses, but he shielded me from a lot. He had mentioned earlier that our first child was not easy, and he was not easy at all. And so I, like, literally 24 hours a day was dealing with him being cranky. I hate saying I didn't do a lot for several years because I did. I raised the kids, kept the house, kept him, and kept the guys fed. I would go out and work ground on occasion if I could, or try to do things that I could. And I paid a lot of bills. I didn't do the books per se, keeping track of everything that I do now, but I paid the bills.
She kept check register and paid the bills.
That was basically it. I didn't do a whole lot.
Early on, she didn't have her hands in a lot of the business aspect of it. And my record keeping,
It's still terrible.
it's terrible.
It's
It
still
always has
terrible.
been terrible. I have many yellow notepads, and when
Everywhere.
one of them gets full, I throw it in the corner and I give me another yellow notepad. And
When he's looking for a note, he's like, there was a yellow notepad. So you go round up 10 or 12 yellow notepads.
it's my chaos, and I understand my chaos to an extent. Once she started keeping detailed records beyond a check register, she used QuickBooks for a while. It was very simple. Once she started keeping better records, then I started dumping more stuff on her. And she's acquired an interest for things, and she'll ask questions about ROI and why we do things a certain way, which I think is fantastic. Thought provoking, if nothing else. It's a topic of discussion. I shielded her from a lot early on because I didn't feel like I needed to burden her with problems she couldn't do anything about. When it doesn't work, I'll explain why it didn't work.
At the time, I didn't have the knowledge. Even if he tried to explain to me, I didn't have the knowledge at that point of the business side of it that I could have been helpful one way or the other because I didn't understand it yet. Now, and I mean the past 10, 12 years-ish maybe, I didn't understand the business aspect of it enough that it would have, I hate to say do me any good, but it wouldn't have done either of us any good for him to try to explain it to me.
And honestly, if I'd have told her what I was doing, she probably would have thrown a shoe. We're here and it's worked. And that's what matters. But in the beginning, the cards were stacked against us.
I don't want to say I was completely in the dark because I knew some basics. I knew it was tough, times were tight, what our loans were, specific details. I did not.
It wasn't that the ag economy was bad. It was just the mountain of debt we had to assume. I had some equipment. It was older equipment, but it was good equipment, but it wasn't nearly to the scale that I needed to farm the amount of acres we had. We ramped up, worked really hard for a really long time to finally get to where there was a glimmer of hope that there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. We didn't see the light, just a glimmer of hope.
With as few employees as possible.
Because we didn't have any capital. We didn't have
need
any.
to pay anybody.
We had one full-time saint, basically, the fantastic man that has been with us. We had part-time retired guys. We were doing a lot with not much labor, but I didn't have money to pay labor. So you figure it out. This is what we have to do.
So, what kept you coming back? The easy thing would have been to walk away.
I knew it was a fantastic opportunity. The pieces were in place. I mean, if somebody gave me a pile of cash, it would have been easy. Because the pieces were there. We had been able to secure this rented land. Plus, we'd picked up some other land on significant amount of land on the outside of that came along in about the same time frame. But as capital intensive ag is, and I mean, for what things cost now, if I had to do it again now, 15, 18 years later than whenever we started with this inflationary period that we've gone through, I don't know how. I don't want to say you couldn't do it. A combine at that time back in 2015, I remember a new one we traded to 300 $50,000 for a separator, I think, brand new one equipped. And they're $300,000 higher than that now. And just the sheer cost of everything has gotten completely out of hand. As tough as it was then, and our gross sales haven't changed much. Commodity prices haven't changed that much. I don't know how in the world a person would do that today. I really don't. All that equipment, what I seen was the price tag on new equipment 15 years ago was ridiculous. It's a different level of ridiculous now.
It'd be pretty impossible for somebody to get started, especially not coming from a family farm and being somebody that inherits some stuff. It's still tough getting started, even if you do inherit stuff. Taking your situation and throwing it in this day and age.
You're correct. It's nearly impossible. I don't want to say anything is impossible, but some things are darn near impossible. It would be really tough.
Paying off the equipment would be tough, but you won't even get to that point because lenders aren't going to lend you money.
No. And that was in the beginning. We had FSA loan, guaranteed loans. We had all sorts of things. I had a really good lender that believed in me at that time, and he bent over backwards to do things that the average ag lender would have never went to the lengths that he went to try to finance us. To a point, you use your resources. You borrow money from different vendors that'll finance your input costs. You use that. You borrow what you can from a bank, and you're limited on capital. You're limited on equity. A person can only borrow so much. You end up leaving a lot of money on the table, but you have to create cash flow. It's tough. It's so capital intensive, whether it's your own capital or if it's borrowed. It takes so much money to operate, just day-to-day operations. It's almost insane to a point when you get used to it. A guy told me it's like bird poop on your cat bill. You just get used to it. The amount it takes to operate a farm, small farms don't take as much money. Large farms take a lot more, but on a per acre basis, it's all proportional. The amount of money it takes to operate is insane.
I mean, gosh, without equipment, or let's say you're paying custom farming, you better be prepared to have what, 800, $1,000 an acre at
Yeah.
a time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So if the average person that's not familiar with the farm could just look at, okay, they're farming this 80 acres and just understand that this person needs to have $80,000 to be able to get this crop in and hope something comes out of it, their eyes would probably be about this big.
And that was, I think, for me, we were talking earlier, I thought he was crazy because he borrowed money to pay interest. But farm accounting and business is completely different from any other business or bookkeeping.
The cash flows are different, and that's one of the things I touched on good ag bankers. I've dealt with enough ag bankers through the years. There are very few truly good ag bankers out there in ag lending. There are a lot of commercial lenders that do ag. They still don't understand ag, and they have a hard time wrapping their head around the cash flows of ag. I think that's their biggest obstacle to overcome is they truly don't understand the capital intensiveness, the cash flows that are involved in grain sales. Maybe livestock's different. If a guy's sending pigs out every week or milk out twice a week, then that's different. But when you're grain farming and you're selling a commodity and you're holding it for 6-8 months or longer, and the liabilities and trying to keep a balance sheet straight, it separates the really good lenders from the average lenders pretty quick, in my opinion.
They need to understand that, but beware of the risk and stuff like that. So, looking back at your years farming, I know it was a rough start. Since you started going back to the farm and helping him out to now, what are some of the biggest views about farming in general that have changed?
I think I had kind of the same idea that a lot of people You really thought that they just kind of put the seed in the ground and then they harvested in the fall and that was it. You don't understand the not even like the behind the scenes as far as ordering seed, figuring out what seed would be best in what fields and what it can tolerate and what it can't. But then also the chemical on top of that and what chemical is going to work best with which seeds. You spray before, you spray during, you spray after. Do you do liquid nitrogen? Do you do anhydrous? Do you do it before? Do you do it after planting? Like there's just so much, even before putting the seed in the ground, dealing with drainage and so much before you even put the seeds in the ground that is kind of mind blowing to me when I actually figured out what all he's actually doing. I was still working off the farm and he was farming. I'm like, what do you do all the time? You're always working. It didn't take me long, especially after we got married and we're living in the same house. And I'm like, okay, now I understand why he's always working. Because if there's not something in the field, something's broken or needs improvements, there's always something to do on the farm. And this year, especially, this year's been crazy with breakdowns and everything else. Probably, I think there's been more to fix this year than in the last 5 years. But that was just me learning behind the scenes, figuring out what goes into it. And of course, people ask me, probably irks me the most is when somebody says, do you want to do this or that? I'm like, I got to go to work. And they're like, don't you just work for your husband? I'm like, yep, I just worked for my husband. Like, I don't know if they think I follow him around and pick up behind him, or I don't know what they think I do. I'm usually in the office or helping him out at least 4 days a week between running kids and everything else. I hate to use the word ignorance, but uneducated ignorance of what actually goes into it. Typically run our second combine in wheat and beans and shell corn as well. But when I'm in the combine, my friends are, oh, okay, she's working. They can see me in the field or after work and I'm filthy. They can see that and realize I'm working. But if I'm in the office with scale ticket contracts, paying bills, all of those types of things, that's when they don't really think I'm doing anything. Those are the behind the scenes things people don't realize farmers actually have to deal with.
Did you know what you're getting into when you decided to farm full time, Kent?
I did. There's challenges that come along. And one of the things that I probably was more naive about when we started, we had one employee and fantastic man, fantastic employee. I really thought that whenever I needed an additional employee, I could just select that person, pay them, and employ them. I really thought that obtaining a workforce would be a whole lot easier than what it has been. We've had several employees come through the door that haven't lasted very long in the last 15 years. Every one of them's got a different story, why they didn't. And some of them, I just probably didn't mesh with their personalities, why they moved on. Employing a workforce is probably the most challenging part of the farm work, capital, equipment breakdowns, Mother Nature, poor crops, all that stuff is frustrating and make you really question at times your sanity. Maybe not question why you do what you do, but question your sanity. But employing a workforce is a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
You hear this from all industries. Finding people to show up for work is really hard to come by. Working on a farm is not easy. There are days that are easier than others, but we don't have money to hire 2 or 3 guys to sit around every once in a while. I'm not saying they have to work every minute that they're here, but we don't have the money to pay a bunch of guys for extra sit around time.
If I need 3 guys, I've hired 2, and the 2 are going to have to do the work of 3 men.
anytime we do hire someone, and you know, we've gotten several guys that are, oh yeah, I grew up on a farm, or I'm used to working long hours. I'm like, we're not talking 9 to 6 instead of 9 to 5. We're talking long hours, especially during harvest is obviously the worst. But anytime he comes to me and says, found this guy, I'm like, is he married? Does he have a girlfriend? Because that's who I want to talk to. One guy, for example, that we hired, and I'm like, I want to talk to, it was his wife. And, oh, yeah, I'm used to him working all the time. I'm like, it's not the same. I know that you think he works all the time now, but I promise it's not the same. I want you to know this before he comes to work for us because it's not the same. And it's hard for people to wrap their head around that. Yeah, I'm used to working 50 hours a week. That's not going to cut it. There'll be weeks that'll be fine, but there's going to be a lot of weeks that it's going to be a whole lot more than 50. And I think that's one of our biggest. And everybody wants a Monday through Friday, no weekends, no holidays. And that's just not something that most farms, ours especially, can give to somebody.
We try to be as respectful of their time as we can. There are times when there's work to be done and you have to do the work. And if that means it's a 16-hour day, then it was a 16-hour day. That's not frequent. But if it's an 8-hour day, that's perfectly fine. They can do their work and go home. I had no problem with that. But when there's work to be done, we have to do the work. And really, a person to be a farm employee, it's more than just a job. They have to really enjoy what they do. Some days are easier than others. I've had people tell me, it wasn't a fun day, but tomorrow's going to be different. We may have had to clean out a couple grain bins today, but we know tomorrow they're cleaned out, so we're not going to do that tomorrow. So there's the variety of it, and that changes quite frequently.
I will say, when a new guy wants a job, equipment's a big deal. It's an expensive thing to have, to fix, and you want somebody that's going to work for you that realizes that, and they're going to take care of whatever they're using that day. So I always look at what they're driving, not necessarily what it is, but if they're taking care of it. If they don't take care of what they have, they're not going to take care of what we have because it doesn't mean anything to them. That's a big thing for me when hiring a new guy. I'm not saying it has to be a nice truck. It doesn't have to be anything. It can be a $500 truck. But
Did they take care of their $500?
if they're not trying to take care of what they have, they are not going to take care of what we have.
That has held true most of the time.
Do you feel like it's gotten harder over the years to find good help for the farm?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Ag has its own set of challenges in retaining employees. Pretty much anybody in the workforce that you talk to, there's a commonality in any blue collar job trying to find and retain quality employees. It's not so much the skill set, it's the desire, it's the willingness, it's the teachableness that comes along. A lot of people nowadays, I don't think that they have the willingness isn't there. A lot of them, not all by any means, but a lot of them, their attitude whenever they come to work is, we're going to do the bare minimum that we need to do to get through the day and to retain the job so we can come back and do this tomorrow. It's not the attitude that let's do it well. It's let's just see what the bare minimum is that we can get by with. And I think that's fairly common in society today. The lack of responsibility, the
Lack of pride in a job well done, a lot of time.
it seems like it. And it's society's problem. Society has allowed this to happen. And we had a friend that had a little restaurant business and they got out of that for labor reasons. But when they started that, whenever they would do an interview, they would ask the questions and pick their employees. And towards the end, what they looked for in an employee was completely different than 10 years earlier. They were willing to let the employees dictate what they were going to do because they had to, or they were not going to have anyone show up to work. I think it's across the board in every industry now. And like I said, we as society have let this happen. And I don't really see a fix.
It really turned around at COVID, but I think I finally figured out what it is. And it makes perfect sense. All these non-essential employees lost their jobs. They had to find money elsewhere. And I think a lot of them figured out they can make money online, social media, working from home, and never left. You can see at restaurants, those people never came back. People figured out they could make money online and no sense going back to work. I think it'll stay that way forever.
It's crazy. It seems to be every industry. We don't travel a tremendous amount, but twice a year we go somewhere with the kids. No matter where, Maryland, Texas, Florida, no matter where we've been, everybody's looking for help, and it's every industry. And it's just crazy to me. It's nothing specific anywhere. It's all trades. No one can find help, and no one can find good help.
That's the only answer I could come up with is people figuring out how to make money online. I'm not good at social media, but the people that are good at it can make more than a living.
It's insane.
It's almost kind of scary, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
is. It is.
We talked about your view of farming over the years. Looking at your time farming and stuff like that, what has given you the most pride?
I think being successful in anything that you do, whether it's a task completed and it was done what you felt like it was done well, or it could be the crop that you raised. But I think the things that give me the most pride, probably the only thing, I shouldn't say only thing, but what does give me pride is when you look back for Melissa, it might be the day that she mowed her yard or her lawn, where her lines in the lawn straighter than they were the previous week. She takes pride in that. Doesn't cost anything. It's just how straight can I drive and my wheel tracks to all be parallel. I think that's
No, he doesn't get to mow my yard.
I
If you can't tell, I'm a little particular about it.
haven't mowed lawn since George Bush was in office. I don't believe. For me, anything I do, when I look at it, and I think I'm really proud of my work. I feel like I did it the way it needed to be done. I did it well. And I think that gives me the most pride. Whether anybody else sees it or not, at the end of the day, you did well at whatever the task. You gave it 110%. It worked out and you met your own expectations.
Yeah, and big picture, I mean, you got to have a lot of pride at all the tough times you went through and made it work, and now you're probably sitting better than a lot.
For a lot of people, I think most people this way, they may not admit it. But anytime you can do something and look back and it's an accomplishment, let all of those little accomplishments, some of them are small, some are big. I think that's where my pride comes from. Last time we bought it wasn't a new tractor, but it was a light new tractor. I really wasn't that proud of it. And the darn thing cost us just a ridiculous amount of money. But it's a tool. It's a tool to do a job. Some people get excited over the plastic on the seats and all that stuff, and they want to put their new tractor out front so the neighbors can see it and boast, look what I have. I don't get that feeling. Not once since we owned that tractor have I really, I don't want to say I'm not proud to own it, but it's not a big deal to me.
And him talking about that, it's kind of like pickup trucks. Around here, a lot of farmers, they drive nice new pickup trucks and get a new one every couple of years. He's had one new pickup truck ever. And that was only because he was having issues with the one that he had bought used from a friend of ours and was having issues with it. We were leaving town that day and he had to have something and he went and bought a new truck, which that was 2016. Still has the truck. Only new vehicle he's ever bought himself. He will buy me new vehicles, but he will not buy himself a new truck. And he's never, and again, it's a tool for him. He's like, I'm driving it around the farm. I don't need something new. to drive around the farm and get dirty and somebody's going to mess it up. And he's just not a very boastful person. And to me, with the pickup trucks is what lots of farmers have, nice, shiny trucks. And it's just not a big deal for him. He doesn't run around in a new pickup truck.
Last year, we had a bank note we'd been paying on him for a while. It had a whole bunch of stuff on it. And it wasn't any one thing. It was just a whole bunch of stuff on that note. And I knew we had one payment left to make on it. I remember when the note was paid, they send that mortgage to you with a rubber stamp, says that it's paid off. And I remember she had it on her desk, not intentionally, but she had it on her desk to file it. And I picked that paper up and I looked at it, and it was well over $1 million. And I remember the discontent that I had whenever I signed that 6, 7 years prior. There was a sense of pride that I had seeing that red rubber stamp on that loan document laying in the middle of her desk, that we did that. And it finally got paid off 100% free and clear.
Big mountain to climb. I was giggling a little bit talking about the trucks because it reminded me of my old man. He never buys new tractors. They probably have 3,000 head of cattle and 2,500 acres. I don't know if he's ever bought a tractor under 6,000 hours. He bought a new truck in 96, a half-ton Dodge. It's the biggest piece of junk ever. Drove that for a while. And then he bought a 2-year-old truck from a vet that had 300,000 on it. He drove that for 8 years, and it's still in the back, and I think it has 470. So his next truck is 2 years old, and it has 140,000. Now that he's retired, I think he's just turned 67. He finally bought himself a nice truck, a 2020, and he hides it in the garage so nobody sees it. It's 5 years old.
It's like your dad.
It's like, I don't want anybody to see I got a new truck. Like,
right?
It's 5 years old, man.
I know.
It's nice to have something to show for your work. It's nice to work. It doesn't matter what your job is, but you work at something, and it's nice to have things to show for it. It's a token. For all that hard work, you get to own something in exchange. And that's nice, and it's satisfactory and everything. For me, a pickup truck, it's kind of a tool. I don't want to tear it up, and I don't want a piece of junk. I'll drive a vehicle until I can't count on it. If I go to get in that vehicle and I'm uncertain that I'm going to be able to get to my destination, then I'll buy a different truck, a different used truck, maybe.
He's thinking about a new one.
I've been trying to talk him into it.
It's priorities. Where do you want to spend your money?
There's nothing wrong with buying new equipment if people can justify it.
No.
No,
Like-
if you can,
No.
that's fine. We've bought land in the last few years. If I bought more plastic seat covers and new equipment, we probably wouldn't have had the means to buy the land. It's where a person wants to put their money. Well, that's personal preference. I don't think a person should try to save their way to prosperity and not reinvest in their tools that make their living, but still have some capital to be able to do some other things also. So it's just whatever person wants to do with their money, and that's perfectly fine.
I told myself I would never buy a brand new vehicle, and I never have. I came to Traction from a different job with the company vehicle and came here, so I had to give that up. I just bought a 2013 Equinox with 140,000. It's been towed 3 times in the past year.
Oh my gosh.
The next vehicle might be a brand new vehicle. It's stressful. I could buy a nicer vehicle, but I have other priorities. Equipment's the same way. Enough breakdowns. Maybe just throw your hands up
you
and be
do.
like, I'm done with it.
Again, back to try and keep better track of things, and with Traction, and trying to get him, when he goes to get parts for something, I'm like, put it on the purchase order. We have 2 combines. They're both older. One's a 13 and one's a 15. When you get parts, I need to know which combine, because we're going to have to upgrade one within the next couple of years. I need to know which one's costing us more money. And the only way for me to know is for him to put it on the purchase order so I can put it in Traction.
That's
that-
really changed in the past 5 years. Just combine specifically. I don't know if more farmers are going to new equipment so they're not broke down during harvest, but my brother upgraded from a 9660 to one of the first 670s, and he couldn't sell that 9660. And 2 years later, he's got them both, and he'd never go without two combines again. I don't know why there's such a big stock of used combines people aren't wanting to buy, if people are just buying new, or what the deal is there.
We ran two machines. We leased a second machine there for a couple seasons. We shared a lease with a friend, and they needed the hours at different times of the harvest window than what we did, and it worked for us. I looked at what we paid on a lease and thought I could have made a payment on a really nice used machine, put it on our balance sheet. We just bought another machine at that point in time, and we ran two ever since. And it is nice when you have two machines that's basically the same age and the same model. You don't have to keep as many spare parts around because they're interchangeable. And the older the machines get, the more likely they are to have some breakdowns, and hopefully they're minor, but you'll have them from time to time. And it's naive to think that you won't have them. But having two machines the same model and the same age, there's some advantages to that.
Yeah, I think my brother, when he couldn't sell that 9660, he's like, I'll just keep it around for bean season. We'll do two combines with beans and one with corn. And I think he went out and bought a 35-foot bean head for, like, correct me if I'm wrong, like 10 grand or something, like,
Probably.
and hasn't been willing to give it up yet, even though it's just for a week or two during beans. I
Right.
mean, bean harvest is tough. You got short windows. Might not need two combines for corn, but beans, if you got people to run them, man, it can save your rear, especially if you got to quit by 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock and can't start till 10 or 11.
That's right. I don't know how many years now. We ran into a labor situation. We had a fellow quit unannounced right before we started harvest. I went home, asked my wife, what are you doing tomorrow?
My least favorite question ever. What are you doing tomorrow? I'm like,
That could be anything whenever I ask, what are you doing tomorrow? I mean, it could be, I've got to go to Canada, or you just don't know. And so she looked at me and she said, what do you need me to do tomorrow? And I said, I either need you to drive a semi or shell corn. She does not get along with 9-speed transmission very well. She drives combine and has shelled more corn in the last 5, 6, 7 years, however long this has been, than I do every fall. And she enjoys it for the most part. I think by the end of the season, she's done, fed up.
we live in Illinois. Our kids go to school in Indiana. So I've got to get them to school, then get back to Illinois, pack lunches for both of us, get all my stuff done, pay what few bills that are due right now, get my stuff together, get in the combine, run the combine all day. And then I need to leave about dinner time so that I can go fix the kids' dinner, get them baths, bed, do homework. Harvest time is crazy for everybody. For a mom that runs the combine, it's even crazier.
Out of everything you do all year, that's the funnest job.
It's not bad in the combine.
It's the most relaxing.
If you've got a good team, if you've got a good cart driver and good truck drivers, and they all do their job well, it is very rewarding. The best day is when there's no radio traffic, because you know that if they're not talking, there's no problems, just a smooth day. But I've told her, I said, when you're in the combine, you're the boss, because everybody is there. Their job that day is to make sure that combine does not stop. And you can make it really difficult on them if you want to, or make it pretty easy on them if you want to.
Do you guys run one or two combines during corn?
We run one in corn. We're not geared up for two machines. We run one 12-row machine and 1,000 bushel cart. We've got 4 semis, but usually we don't run 4. We've kind of got a grain system on our farm in Indiana, and then we've got our main system in Illinois. It's kind of sized for a 12-row machine and a cart, and 30,000 bushel of corn is very doable for us, but we usually don't push it that much. A lot of times we're 25 to 28,000. We've had some really crazy days with some really high numbers, but that was a hurricane coming in the fall in September or something, and that sort of thing, concerned that we need to get something out. But 30,000 bushel corn day for us is about all we ever try to harvest.
Is 1,000 bushel grain cart enough, or is that getting close to being a little too small?
Well, I say 1,000. It's a little bit over 1,000. We dump every pass. A lot of our fields, we have maybe two that are longer than half-mile rows. A lot of them are quarter sections or so, the half-mile rows. We catch every other pass, and with a big hopper extension, you're pushing that 250 bushel corn. You get up above that, then you've got to dump both ways. With a 12-row head in a half-mile long rows, you're pushing that 900 to 1,000 bushels in good corn, and that's a semi-load. We load a truck every round. We've got some center pivot irrigation. Where we farm, a lot of people think Illinois is all Champaign County, and that's not true. We're down here in the south. We raise corn south of I-70. It's harder to raise down here. This time of year, we're 5 days away from a drought, but with center pivot irrigation, we can raise some pretty respectable crops. We can compete with those guys up north if it doesn't get too hot. And some pretty good yielding corn. We make a round and send a semi down the road and fill the next one. It works pretty good for us.
So if there's like a really exceptional year, would your grain cart be too small? I'm just trying to do the math.
If we get to where the 270, 280, 300 bushel corn is common or realistic number, then no, that 1,000 bushels won't be enough. For us, it's efficiency and time. Even if we don't have a fantastic yield, let's say it's 200 bushel corn or less, we may have 700, 750 bushels in that 1,000 bushel truck when it gets to the end. We send that truck on down the road anyhow, and we're not hauling great distance. If we were hauling 30 miles to a grain elevator, we wouldn't do this. But when the grain system is 2-3 miles down the road, we send that semi to dump and get back. If not, our trucks get out of sync. The trucks are full in the wrong spot. The cart's full in the wrong spot. It just works well for us. Every round, we dump the combine, and truck's gone, and the cart's headed back to the opposite end of the field to catch the combine. The combine doesn't stop. Cart doesn't stop. And our flow of trucks doesn't stop. There are a lot of manufacturers going to big carts. I'm sure there's a demand for that. For us, the way everything is sized, 1,000 bushels still works.
I was just kind of curious. I was trying to do the math, compare it to my dad's operation. I think they're 8-row head and 782, and on a really good year, it's borderline. Just trying to figure out. Instead of getting a new cart, you hope the yield tops out at 265 then.
Yeah.
If we ever have that problem to where it won't fit on the cart anymore, we will reluctantly buy a bigger cart. I don't know what we do about trucks.
It'd be a nightmare. You have to buy a 1,200 bushel cart. Each round, you're at about 1,100. So you got to dump 1,000 on this one and 100 on the other.
It messes your truck rotation up
Sure
terribly.
it does.
And you're going to have an extra truck sitting all the time for overflow, typically an extra employee.
And it takes a lot of time when you're filling one truck and you cannot complete that task. There's a lot of time wasted pulling up to the second truck. We run a tracked cart on a tracked tractor, and he can just get from one end of the field to the other in no time flat. And it used to be when we ran a rubber tired tractor and a rubber tired cart, he had to beat the tractor and the cart to death in order to make it back to the opposite end of the field to catch the combine. Where now, running the track machines, it's a breeze. But it's not uncommon when you're shelling through the field at 3.5 to 3.78 mile an hour, and the cart will just pass you like you're sitting still, headed to the opposite end of the field to wait on you.
He gets along on the tracks.
They're a little bit easier. Like once you get used to them, if you don't know what you're doing with tracks, you can bugger stuff up in a hurry. But I imagine it gives you a lot more flexibility to kind of narrow stuff down, getting that corn into the semi truck too.
Like the machine that we have, it's definitely more expensive than a wheeled machine. And we put a lot of hours on the fall around a grain cart. And it's a high dollar machine to run on a cart, but it's way more efficient in time used. That combine literally never has to wait on that cart. the cart's always waiting on the combine. And it wasn't by design. The carts we had, it didn't have good flotation. If the ground was soft, it was a row crop cart. So it had 4 tires and they were row crop tires and they left tracks everywhere. Even if the ground was dry, I didn't like that. So I got a track cart. And then it wasn't too long after that, we ended up with a track tractor. And boy, that was a slick combination.
Do you have the hydraulic spout on your grain cart?
No, we do not. That was an option in this cart, but it wasn't on there whenever we purchased it. I've thought to put that on there. Fortunately, we've had some pretty good cart operators through the years that do a pretty good job loading a truck without the tipping spout.
We never had one, and I don't know if the one we got came with it, but we probably never go back without it.
It's nice. There's like a lot of things that you have, you don't think that you really need it until you use it, and you think, it's pretty nice. I don't want to give it up.
In Iowa, during harvest, you can run 90,000 pounds on your semis. I appreciate you guys joining. This is the first one I've recorded with multiple guests. We got some more work to do, but I'm excited that we were able to make this work. Before we wrap this up, we're going to take a little bit of the podcast we had last time. Tracy asked a question, and we're going to have you guys answer that, get perspective from both of you, and then have you come up with a question for the next one. We're going to call this Pass the Mic. So the question Tracy came up with, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing this, but looking at the next 10, 20 years, what do you think are going to be the biggest changes in farming, and what does the next generation need to do to step up to fill those voids? What are the kids going to need to do to adjust lifestyle or learn?
Consolidation is inevitable. And I'm not for this. I just think that it's the way it's going to be. There's going to continue to be larger farms and fewer farms. And that's the way it has always been through history. And I think that's the way it's going to be. And I'm not for or against it because consolidation in general, and there's definitely some positives to come from it, but I'm not so much for it. I don't want to be the operator that sits in an office and a desk and the employees do all the work. I see that, and we have some neighbors that way, and it works for them. I'm not against it. I don't want that to be me. I want a good workforce, but I want to be in the mix of it, and I want to have my job that day and be out amongst them and do my job. The challenging thing, I think, the one thing that's going to evolve, the technology, it continues to play more of a key role every day in production ag. And there's definitely some positives that come from that, no doubt. But the more that we are reliant on this technology, the more that we have handcuffed ourselves to be reliant on this technology. Most farmers have a diesel pickup truck, and we all know the diesel emission problems. We are reliant upon that technology, and when it fails, you're left stranded on the side of the road. There are so many things about technology we become reliant upon by design. We've had problems with hacking in our email. Everything's tied together electronically. We get a hacker that gets in an email address, and then it goes way beyond credit cards and things. It goes into accounts, and it can get into your banking and all this stuff. And not maybe, but you're forced to do all this stuff electronically now. You don't have an option. If you're going to play on the world stage, this is what you're going to do. And I don't know that all that stuff it's good, but I don't know if it's all good. And I think that we all need to think about if being 100% reliant upon technology is really a good thing. I don't know. That's my one thing that the future, I think, holds inevitably, and we're not going to change it. Technology's brought some fantastic things to the farm. It really has. There's things that technology will do that we could have never got to this place with production if it wasn't for technology.
Great answer. Anything to add, Melissa?
I don't think so. I mean, I had said earlier, it's great when it works and the world comes crashing down when it doesn't. It's not just on the farm. Like the kids at school last year, one time the internet went out. They had no way of doing their curriculum because everything's on their Chromebooks. School was at a halt. And it's just crazy that teachers were using their cell phones because they couldn't use the school phone. I have always loved the technology aspect, especially with the farm. It keeps track of everything, but then it also causes issues. Sometimes our combines, the iPads don't talk together very well, and that gets messed up. But you can't not use it. It's a real pain, especially when you don't have internet access or your internet goes down, which ours does a lot. You just have to learn it and use it because that's how the entire world is going.
We never touched upon this. So kids are in school.
Yep, we have a 6th grader, 8th grader, and a senior.
I bet you got your hands full with those.
The
Any of them want to come back to the farm?
6th grader might. We have boy, girl, boy. The oldest is into building computers. He's very technology driven in that aspect as far as building stuff. The youngest has some interest in it. Right now, his interest is baseball and basketball. He likes to go to work with dad, really likes to go fishing with dad more than working. But the older he gets, the more interest he has in it. But right now, he's focused on being a kid.
And he needs to be a kid.
Regardless of what you do, you have to work for the rest of your life. The kid needs to be a kid while they're a kid.
Only a couple more years of running them around to practice, though.
I know. Yeah.
One thing you touched on earlier in your question, and I don't think either one of us answered that, or one thing I think you would ask something to do with the next generation. Maybe I was a spinoff from that. But one of the things that, and I think ag is looking at this, but the transition of assets from generation to generation is going to be a key part of whether an operation continues to be viable in the future, or maybe its demise. If the next generation to run an operation, if they have to buy assets out of a family, buy a family out to continue that operation on, the labor, or I always say labor, the capital that's involved to own these assets in these operations, it's not going to be attainable for a brother to buy out his siblings off the farm. It's the elephant in the room. And as land prices go up, equipment costs go up, it's going to be a major hurdle that some of these operations continue to stay viable. When you're talking about millions of dollars of assets, that operator needs to at least be in control of in order to continue. It's a serious situation. Some adult children out there that have farmed with their parents for decades, and they're almost retirement age, and they're going to be forced to buy out their siblings when their elderly parents don't leave it to them in a favorable manner. I don't know what right is. What's equal isn't fair, and what's fair isn't equal. I don't know what the right thing to do, but I see it's going to be the demise of a lot of operations. And it's going to be sad because some of these operations are multi-generational. They've grown over time, but they start off as small farms, but it got handed down. It's been handed down 2 or 3 generations now. But whenever it was handed down, land was worth $100 an acre, $200 an acre, and then to 1,000, and maybe 2,000, and maybe 5, and maybe 10. And there's farmland that's $15,000 to $20,000 an acre. And I just don't see that if a generation has to buy that operation, I don't know that they're going to be able to do it. And that's concerning to me for the lineage of the family farm. I think it's going to halt in a lot of situations. With the baby boomer generation and their holding of land that they have in this country right now, heard some statistics recently about the majority of the land is held by people 65 and older. They don't have any more years left on this planet. What's going to happen after that? I think the industry needs to be concerned of that. And I think that there needs to be some education to some of these people what's going to happen if it's not done properly.
The last thing you want is not to have your ducks in a row when somebody passes and it's evenly split, and then you have to sell ground to pay capital gains tax.
Exactly right. The bulk of that problem is assets that we handle on the farm are so highly valued now that it's going to get to the point where they're not going to be able to buy out the other shareholders. It's not going to be feasible because the number is too big.
Fastest way to separate a family.
Yes, it is.
What do you guys have for question for the next guest?
I think I would like to know, of all the opportunities that, like, we have had some opportunities and we've missed some opportunities just because we weren't able to take them. I've had opportunities to buy small parcels of farmland and we just couldn't figure out how to do it. So opportunity passed. Looking back, even 3 or 4 years afterwards, I could have seen a way, but in the moment, I couldn't. You're just absolutely strapped. Situations like that pass, but I wonder how many operators that have gone through the bulk of their career, not that they have to be to retirement age, but they've gone through the bulk of their career, if they would choose the same path, if they would do things materialistically differently, or if they feel like they've done things really to the best of their ability and they really wouldn't change much. I think we would all do things differently.
It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys joining. This should turn out pretty good. I'm happy you both came on.
I don't know as much on the actual farming aspect as what he does. He's been doing it a bit longer.
I couldn't do it without her.
And you sound pretty thankful to have her around, that's for sure.
We make a good team.
It's been nice meeting you guys and looking forward to staying in touch.
Thank you.